A little bit more of a light-hearted one, this one, because I thought this might be both entertaining and useful at the same time. So this is about entering new contracts and things to watch out for. So I've just had a conversation online with EE because I'm looking to move networks because the one that I'm with is not particularly great. And if you follow my videos for long enough, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. So I had an online conversation with EE and I said, we're looking to move 3 contracts to you. No pun intended, with no reference to the previous provider whatsoever, but we were looking to move 3 contracts to EE. And so I had this online conversation and I said, what is the best deal that you can do for 3 iPhone contracts, unlimited and uncapped and everything else? They came back and said, well, we can do the first contract for you at £27, unlimited, all-rounded, whatever they call it, unlimited stuff. They gave me a screenshot of it, which I will put on screen when I edit this video, so you can probably see it right now. And then they said you can have the second and the third contracts at £15 each, so representing a £12 discount. Great, so I thought. But being the lawyer, and whose job it is sometimes to read the small print and the terms and conditions and things like that, I do press for the terms and conditions, so hence this video, because I thought I would just tell you, when you're entering these contracts, you may not always realise that there are various terms and small prints and things like that that might affect whether or not you would enter the contract. So that brings on a little bit of a law lesson, time for school. So when you enter a contract, the trader or whoever it is you're contracting with makes what we refer to as representations to you. They tell you something. They tell you what's included. And for example, in a consumer contract, if they tell you this is good for X purpose, then it should be good for X purpose, even if the thing you're buying is not normally good for that purpose. If they tell you it is, or you make it known that that's the purpose you're buying it for, and they say it's good for that, it should be good for that. And if it's not, then it's a breach of those terms. So that becomes a term of the contract. So when they make these representations to you, as in my view, they sent me a screenshot of one contract and said you can have this for £27 and a second and a third at the discounted rate, you would reasonably infer that that's the same thing because you're having 3 of the same. Not quite the case, and being the lawyer, I press and I ask the question, and it turns out I was right to be a little bit dubious. So the one thing that I was quite particular about was the speed, because I've long been a believer that speeds are capped or throttled, might be the technical term. Now, having used consumer broadband for many, many years and then moved on to business broadband, I've realised that the consumer one is throttled. In my experience and in my opinion, it's throttled so that even if you're paying, let's say, for a speed of 500 meg down speed, you may not always get 500 meg down speed. If you are using it a lot, they might throttle your speed. Likewise, the upstream. The upstream I found is much more throttled than the downstream. By the by, when you move on to business, it should not be throttled. And when I had a very frank conversation, this is on the broadband contract, when I had a very frank conversation about that broadband contract, they told me that, yeah, we don't throttle the business ones. So I'm now on a business broadband contract. Anyway, back to EE. Obviously, they told me that they would give me these 3 contracts as per the screenshot they sent me. So I asked the question, is it speed capped or is it uncapped speed? I can't remember the phrase I used, but it was a clear question. And they said that would be capped speed. I said, well, I don't want capped speed. And then they said their response was speed capped at 100 meg would be £20, not 15. Something, well, if £20 buys me a capped speed of 100, what is the £15 contract capped at? I didn't even get to ask that question for reasons which will become very apparent. So I said, well, I don't want it capped. So their response, rather bluntly, was then it'll be £27. And I thought that was quite blunt, frankly, because I'm a prospective new customer here with 3 new contracts, and just asking a question which I really shouldn't have had to ask because it was reasonably clear from what they said that it should be an uncapped speed because it should have matched the screenshot they sent me. But then I said rather gleefully, then it'll be £0 because I wasn't going to pay £27 when he told me there was a discount for the 3 contracts, etc. And then I typed another message, but even before I got that message out, he terminated the chat. Not cool, EE. Not cool at all. My follow-up was, what is the best you can do? But even before that sent, he terminated the chat. So not only was there a potential misrepresentation there, you see, this is what we say in law. If they represent something to you, if they say this is what you get, and then you enter the contract because you rely upon it and you were induced by that representation to enter the contract. Now, I would have relied upon it and I would have been induced into that contract by what he told me. He told me, this is what you get. And so that was a representation, and I was induced by that representation to enter the contract, if I did enter the contract. Now, that being false, meaning that wasn't the term of the contract, then you've got two arguments there. First of all, you've got an argument that there's a breach of contract, because I would argue that it's a term of the contract because he told me that I get that times 3. So I would argue that that was a term of the contract. And I think a court would uphold that, quite frankly. Secondly, in the alternative, because in a claim in misrepresentation, the primary remedy is rescission, meaning you set aside the contract. And in the alternative, there's an award of damages. So you might say, well, I do want the contract, but the difference in the value because of the misrepresentation is X number of pounds, which is not a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things. But when you are paying it times 2 every month for a minimum period of whatever it is, 24 months, I think it was, when you're paying that for a minimum amount of time, that can start to add up, particularly if you didn't realize it was there, particularly if you budget for these things, as I do. I budget for everything. That I didn't think was very good. So there's a potential misrepresentation there. There is the customer service aspect, which I think is a lot to be desired. A prospective new customer with three new contracts. Now, okay, they must sign countless thousands of these every day, and I'm but 3 of them, but still, 3 new contracts. I would think that they would give it just a little bit more time to hear me out, because I was ready. I already have my pack codes from the other provider. 3 pack codes, and I've gone through all the trouble, and that in itself was a stretch, because I asked the question, please may I have my pack code? What's the reason you're leaving the network? I just need the pack code, please. No, we need to know why you want to leave the network. No, I just really need the pack code, please. Well, you're a customer of ours. We like to take care of you. We don't like to lose customers. We want to know what the reason is that you're leaving the network. Please let us know the reason you're leaving the network, and then we can see if we can help you. And I said, okay, in my opinion, in my experience, the network is rubbish. I've given you a year or so to rectify that. It's still no good, so I'd like my pack code, please. Oh, well, in that case, we're going to ensure that we improve the network, and we assure you that we're going to improve the network. So give us a chance, and you need to give us a chance, and we're going to improve the network. I'm like, no, I just need my pack code, please. So anyway, I went through this process 3 times to get 3 separate pack codes. So I was ready, willing, and able to buy these 3 contracts with EE. Now, I know these might sound like very, very small things, but these are the small niggly things that annoy people, because you are, with respect, you are misled if you don't know what question to ask. If you didn't know, or you didn't realize that actually the second and the third contracts are not the same as the first one that they were planning to sell to me, then that is, I think, is a relatively serious problem, because you are told what you are going to get and it's just not what you get. So I will throw up some screenshots of that in the edit. Let me know what you think. Be careful out there. And there are lots of little stories I can tell you about terms of contracts. If you want to stick around, this is a really interesting one. I was with a gym for some time. Let's call it David's gym. Now, I've had lots of injuries over the years. On this particular occasion, back then, I had injury to my shoulder. So they had a system whereby you can pause your membership to the gym. You pay whatever it was, £10 a month or whatever, to keep it paused, so that you don't have to pay a new membership fee. You remain a member, but it's paused, so you can't use the facilities, but you still have an active membership. So I'd frozen it. And I think there was a minimum and a maximum amount of time that you can freeze it for, I remember. And then in the meantime, I had a scan. They realized that there was a serious injury to the shoulder. Bursitis has been caused there, which is serious inflammation and swelling. And that obviously caused a lot of pain. So I couldn't swim, I couldn't use the gym facilities, etc. So I went back and said, actually, I'd like to cancel my membership. Here's my 3 months notice, and then I'm off. They said, no, actually, you've got to wait out your time period for the wait period. Then you've got to pay 3 months at full price and all the rest of it. And that didn't really sit well with me. So I looked at the terms and conditions. And when you look at the terms and conditions, actually, their own terms and conditions. Now, as a lawyer, I often beat people over the head with their own terms and conditions, because very often they don't even understand what they mean themselves, even though it's their own terms and conditions. So I looked at the terms and conditions, and it said, if I provide medical evidence that I cannot use the facilities, my membership is terminated at the end of that month. I think those terms have changed now, but certainly at the time, that's how it was. I did a longer video with more detail when it was more fresh in my memory. I'll link that below if I remember to find it. But yeah, these are really really interesting things. Read the terms, read very carefully what you're being told, ask the questions, because it's not always that clear. So let me know your experiences, and maybe I can pass some comment on those as well. But in the meantime, I thought you'd find that an interesting refresh from all of the politics and etc. lately. But hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.